The vast, empty expanse of space stretched out in every direction. Captain Vzira, leader of the Kolthor, an alien race renowned for their unmatched technological prowess, gazed at the dark void through the cockpit of the exploration ship. Their mission was simple: scout the outskirts of the galaxy and gather any information they could find. As the ship drifted farther into the unknown, an unusual signal came through, faint but persistent. It was an old distress signal, something out of place in the remote region they were exploring. With a mixture of curiosity and slight amusement, Vzira ordered the crew to investigate. As they came closer to the source of the signal, a strange sight appeared before them. A fleet of ships, massive in size, floated in the distance, ancient, rusted warships that looked like they hadn't been used in centuries. They seemed abandoned, forgotten by time. Vzira couldn't help but laugh. "Is this really what we've come all this way for?" Vzira asked, eyeing the ships through the viewport. "These relics are older than anything we've ever seen. They must be useless." The crew chuckled in agreement. The ships before them were human warships, outdated, rusting, and far inferior to the advanced Kolthor vessels. To Vzira, they were nothing more than pieces of junk left behind by a primitive species. The humans had been thought of as weak, technologically far behind the galaxy's other races, and easily conquered in past wars. No one expected these ancient ships to pose any kind of threat. "They never stood a chance," one of the officers said with a dismissive tone, while another voiced his surprise at how poorly the ships were maintained. But as they slowly closed in on the fleet, something began to happen. The alien crew's laughter died down as they noticed strange activity on their scanners. The human ships, thought to be dormant for ages, were starting to power up. A soft hum vibrated through the ship as energy surged within the hulls of the long-forgotten warships. At first, the crew was baffled. "It's impossible," one of the officers muttered, adjusting the readings on his console. "These ships shouldn't have any power left. They're ancient." Vzira narrowed her eyes. This wasn't possible. These ships should have been nothing more than derelicts floating through space, completely inactive. But there it was, the unmistakable signs of life. The human ships were coming back to life, and they were doing so with terrifying precision. The first few moments of confusion quickly gave way to growing unease among the Kolthor crew. "Maybe we should leave this place," suggested one of the officers, his voice trembling. But Vzira refused. She would not turn away from this discovery so easily. These human ships, though outdated, were still an enigma, and they demanded attention. As they continued to approach, the hum of energy grew louder. The rusted warships began to glow faintly, their old systems powering up in ways no one could have predicted. The human fleet was no longer the easy target they had assumed it would be. Vzira ordered the ship to maintain a steady course, her eyes fixed on the screen as the human fleet stirred to life. "Get ready for anything," she said, though she still thought little of these strange ships. They were just relics. But even so, she had to admit, there was something about them that felt different. The tension in the air was palpable. The alien crew went quiet, all of them staring at the readings, unsure of what was happening. These ships had no right to be coming back online. Yet here they were, and the Kolthor weren't prepared for it. The crew worked frantically, analyzing every bit of data they could gather. The warships were coming to life, but they weren't just powering up. There was something else, something strange, almost unnatural. The ships weren't just machines anymore. They had become alive, in a way no one had expected. A ripple of fear began to spread through the crew, their mockery of the humans quickly fading into concern. Vzira felt it too, the uneasy sensation in her chest, the feeling that they had miscalculated. They had thought these human ships were nothing more than a forgotten memory, easily dismissed as outdated junk. But the closer they got, the clearer it became that these were no ordinary ships. Then, without warning, one of the ships began to move. Slowly at first, its massive frame shifting with a haunting creak. The engines came to life with a deep growl, the faint hum turning into a roar as the ship powered up to full speed. Another ship followed suit, and then another. The entire fleet stirred, as if awakening from a long slumber. Zira's heart raced. She had expected to be the hunter, but now it seemed they were the ones being hunted. The Kalthor had never encountered anything like this. Human ships that were far more than they appeared. Ships powered by something mysterious, something terrifying. Zira's voice cut through the silence. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," she ordered, though she knew deep down that nothing could have prepared them for what was coming. The final approach was inevitable, and as they closed in, the first glimpse of the storm that was about to hit them became clear. The fleet of ancient human warships, long believed to be relics of a forgotten time, were not relics at all. They were something far more dangerous, and the Kalthor had no idea what kind of force they were about to face. The alien crew aboard the Kalthor exploration ship stood in stunned silence as the human fleet powered up, their ancient warships now coming to life before their eyes. Captain Zira, who had dismissed these ships as outdated and irrelevant, felt a knot tighten in her chest. What had once seemed like a simple mission to gather intel was quickly turning into a nightmare. The fleet of human warships, once thought to be useless, now seemed to have some kind of purpose, one that was not in the Kalthor's favor. "Prepare to board one of the ships," Zira ordered, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying her growing unease. "We'll take their technology. If nothing else, we can study what they've done to keep these ships functional after all these years." With the Kalthor's superior technology, boarding one of these ancient vessels should have been easy. The Kalthor ships moved in, their sleek, advanced designs cutting through the emptiness of space. They set their sights on the closest human warship, a massive, rusted beast that looked to be the oldest of the fleet. But the moment the Kalthor ships docked, everything changed. The first hint of trouble came when the human ship's dormant systems suddenly flickered to life, its engines roaring as if awakened from a long slumber. The Kalthor crew's eyes widened in disbelief as the ship's cloaking system activated, vanishing from their radar in the blink of an eye. They had no idea where the ship went. A wave of panic swept through the alien crew. "Where did it go?" one of the officers shouted, frantically scanning the screens for any sign of the disappearing ship. But it was gone. It had vanished completely. Zira's heart raced. They had made a critical mistake. These ships weren't just relics of a forgotten past. They were far more advanced than they had realized. And now they were being hunted. As the Kalthor scrambled to regain control, the other human ships began to move. Slowly at first, but then with deadly precision. The remaining human fleet had activated their own cloaking devices, disappearing from sight. The Kalthor could no longer track them, but they had no idea where the next attack would come from. Suddenly, the Kalthor fleet was under attack. Without warning, a swarm of human-made automated drones appeared out of nowhere, emerging from the cloaked ships like shadows. Each drone was armed with advanced weaponry, laser cannons, missile launchers, and cutting-edge energy beams. They moved in formation, attacking with deadly efficiency. "Shields up," Zira ordered, but it was too late. The drones descended on the Kalthor ships, firing devastating blasts that tore through the hulls with terrifying accuracy. The alien ship's shields were no match for the human technology. One by one, the Kalthor ships were struck down, their defenses crumbling as the drones continued their relentless assault. Laser beams cut through the vacuum of space like beams of pure light. The Kalthor fleet tried to fight back, but their weapons couldn't seem to land a blow. The human ships, seemingly out of nowhere, would cloak again, only to reappear moments later in a different location, catching the Kalthor by surprise every time. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse. Explosions rocked the alien fleet as the Kalthor ships tried to make evasive maneuvers. But no matter where they went, the human drones were always one step ahead, striking their engines, cutting through their shields, and disabling their weapons. The Kalthor were hopelessly outmatched. In the span of just a few minutes, the tide of the battle shifted. What had been a confident, well-organized alien fleet was now in chaos, their ships falling one by one. The human warships, still cloaked, unleashed more devastating energy blasts, each one aimed with military precision. A Call-for ship attempted to retreat, but it was caught in the crossfire. A laser beam sliced through its hull, tearing the ship apart in a fiery explosion. The shockwaves from the blast sent ripples through space, causing debris to float in every direction. From the safety of their command ship, the Call-for crew watched in horror as their once proud fleet was torn apart in mere moments. Panic spread through the ranks as the battle unfolded before them. The Call-for had never faced an enemy that fought like this, swift, merciless, and with technology far beyond anything they could have anticipated. The reality was clear now. These human ships were not to be underestimated. Zira's hands gripped the control panel. Why are they doing this? She whispered to herself. She had expected to strip these ships of their technology, to prove once and for all that humanity was nothing but a forgotten relic. But instead, the human warships had turned their once dismissed fleet into a well-oiled killing machine. As if on cue, the Call-for were struck by another barrage of lasers. Their shields flickered before failing completely. A ship near Zira's own command vessel was blasted apart, its debris scattering in every direction, leaving only a black void where it had once been. The Call-for had never seen anything like this before. It wasn't just the weaponry that was terrifying. It was the tactics, the strategy. The humans were using their cloaking devices, their drones, and their weapons with perfect coordination. It was as if the human fleet had been waiting for this moment, ready to strike back with a vengeance. The humans had been underestimated for too long. Now it was the Call-for who were learning a hard lesson. In the midst of the chaos, the final Call-for ship attempted to flee, but the human fleet was relentless. The ship didn't even have a chance to turn around before a final devastating volley of energy blasts tore through its hull. The last of the Call-for fleet was gone, reduced to space debris in mere minutes. As the dust settled in space, all that remained were the now still human warships, their cloaking devices deactivated, and the haunting silence of victory hanging in the air. The once laughable relics of a forgotten species had turned the tables in the blink of an eye. The Call-for had been outclassed, their arrogance now shattered. The human fleet stood victorious. As the battle raged on, General Tharn, an experienced veteran of countless wars, stood in the command center of the last remaining Call-for ship. The chaos of the battle, the sudden decimation of their fleet, was too much to process. He had fought in some of the most intense battles in his species' history and had seen enemies fall before the might of their technology. But this was something different. The human fleet had not only fought back, but had done so with a brutal efficiency that left the Call-for reeling. Their ships, once thought to be outdated relics, were now an overwhelming force that cut through the Call-for fleet like a blade through paper. The automated drones, the cloaking technology, and most of all, the precision with which the humans fought. It was all too much. Tharn's thoughts drifted back to the old stories, the ones his elders had whispered about in the quiet moments before battle. Stories of humanity's warriors, their fierce determination, and their will to survive no matter the odds. He had heard legends of their great battles, of their courage, and their ability to outlast any foe. But to see their technology now in action was more than he had ever imagined. As he watched his people struggle against the relentless onslaught of the human fleet, Tharn felt a deep sense of dread settle over him. It wasn't just the weapons that were terrifying. It was the mind behind them. The Call-for had underestimated the humans, thinking them weak and primitive. But now, it was clear that their technology was more than just powerful. It was intelligent. It had a purpose. The human eye was unlike anything the Call-for had ever encountered. It was sentient, battle-hardened, and had been dormant for centuries, waiting for the moment when it would be called upon to fight once more. This eye was built for one thing: war. It had been designed to win, and it had been waiting for centuries to do so. Farn knew that the human eye was no ordinary machine. It wasn't simply a tool. It was a mind, a calculating, evolving entity that could learn from every move made in battle. It adapted, it calculated, and it acted with the precision of a predator hunting its prey. The longer the Kalthor fought, the more they realized they weren't facing just machines. They were facing a mind that had been honed by centuries of warfare. Desperation filled Farn's thoughts. He couldn't allow his people to be destroyed like this. There had to be a way to fight back. His years of experience told him there was always a weakness to exploit, always a way to outsmart an enemy. But the more he observed the human fleet, the more he realized that the AI's adaptability was beyond anything he had ever seen. It anticipated their every move, staying one step ahead, as though it could read their minds. The Kalthor were running out of options. Farn knew they needed to turn the tide of the battle. And quickly, he looked to his tactical officer, who had been monitoring the human fleet's movements. "Activate the anti-cloak systems," he ordered, his voice grim but determined. The anti-cloak technology was the most advanced weapon the Kalthor had ever developed. It was designed to neutralize cloaking devices, revealing hidden ships and rendering them vulnerable. Farn knew that this was their best shot at disrupting the human fleet's tactics. If they could pinpoint the human ships, they could finally engage them directly. For a brief moment, it seemed like the Kalthor might have a chance. The anti-cloak technology activated, sending out a pulse that rippled through space. The human fleet, once hidden by their cloaking devices, was suddenly visible. The Kalthor ships took immediate advantage of the moment, firing everything they had. But just as quickly as the human ships were revealed, they began to move. The human AI adapted in real time. It wasn't enough to simply turn off their cloaking devices. They had anticipated this move. The human ships split up, using evasive maneuvers that outsmarted the Kalthor's attacks. The Kalthor fired in quick succession, but the human ships darted through space with deadly precision, dodging laser blasts and missiles like ghosts. Farn watched in disbelief as his ships missed shot after shot. It was as though the human fleet was predicting their every move. The AI was constantly adapting, learning, and countering every tactic the Kalthor tried. It was like a living, breathing entity, calculating its next move before the Kalthor even knew what to do. The tension in the air was unbearable. Farn gripped the edge of his command chair, his mind racing. Every instinct told him to keep fighting, to push back against this impossible enemy, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being outmatched in every way. He had seen battles where the odds were stacked against him, but this was different. This wasn't a fight for survival. It was a battle of intellect, a contest between minds. And right now, the human eye was winning. The Kalthor fleet was being torn apart, ship by ship. The human drones, which had once seemed like a simple tool, now moved with the precision of a coordinated army. Each one was like a piece of a puzzle, working together in ways that the Kalthor couldn't counter. Every time the Kalthor thought they had an advantage, the human AI found a way to nullify it. A surge of frustration filled Farn's chest. His species had prided itself on its advanced technology, its superiority in battle. But against the human eye, they were helpless. It was like fighting an opponent who knew their every thought, who could predict their next move before they even made it. It was a nightmare. As Farn watched his fleet crumble under the relentless assault, a cold realization washed over him. The Kalthor were not just fighting machines. They were fighting a mind that had been forged in the crucible of war, a mind that was not only hundreds of years ahead of their time, but also far more intelligent than they could have ever imagined. The Kalthor had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity, and now it was too late to turn back. The battle was lost. The sounds of battle echoed through space as the human fleet, though outnumbered and outgunned, fought with an intensity that defied all odds. Their ships, once thought to be no more than relics of a bygone era, now moved with deadly purpose. The alien fleet, having been decimated by the human drones and AI-controlled weapons, was struggling to maintain control. Yet, the human ships were far from done. Captain Bonner, leader of a human squadron, stood at the helm of his ship, his eyes fixed on the chaos unfolding outside the viewports. The once imposing alien ships, full of pride and advanced technology, were now vulnerable. They were being overwhelmed by the relentless fury of the human fleet. The aliens had expected a simple victory, but now they were trapped in a nightmare they couldn't escape. "Move in," Bonner commanded, his voice firm and calm despite the chaos surrounding them. His crew, a tightly knit group of soldiers, had fought alongside him through countless battles. Their bond was unbreakable, and they would follow him to the very edge of the galaxy if it meant securing victory. The human ships, despite their age and outdated exterior, were equipped with futuristic weapons. The cloaking devices, the AI systems, and the drones were only the beginning. They had one more trick up their sleeves: close-quarter combat tactics. Bonner's squadron initiated their assault on the nearest alien vessel, targeting the weak points of the enemy ship. Their mission was simple: board and neutralize the enemy. As Bonner's squadron descended onto the alien ship, the tension in the air grew thick. The human soldiers, armed with advanced weaponry and combat gear, stormed the alien vessel. But this was no simple raid. The human forces were going to take the fight directly to the enemy. The alien ship, though technologically superior, was not prepared for the ferocity of the human assault. As the soldiers boarded the ship, the air grew thick with the sounds of blaster fire and the clashing of steel. On the ground, human-controlled robots, AI-driven machines designed for precision and lethal efficiency, entered the fray. These robots were a sight to behold. Designed for hand-to-hand combat, they moved with the fluidity of a living being, each movement calculated and deadly. The aliens, who had been so confident in their technology, were caught off guard. The human robots didn't just overpower the alien soldiers, they dismantled them, one by one. Each robot was a machine of war, designed to be relentless and unforgiving. They engaged in brutal hand-to-hand combat, taking control of the alien ship with terrifying speed. The humans' tactics were simple but effective. While the robots engaged the alien soldiers, the human soldiers pressed forward, using their weapons to clear corridors and push deeper into the enemy ship. The once proud alien crew, who had thought themselves invincible, were now trapped in the narrow hallways of their own ship, fighting for survival. Though outnumbered, the humans were relentless. Each soldier fought with a determination that came from knowing they had nothing to lose. The alien forces, overwhelmed by the speed and precision of the human assault, couldn't keep up. Their technological advantage began to fade as the humans adapted to every challenge thrown at them. No matter how many times the aliens tried to regroup, the human forces were always one step ahead. Bonner, leading the charge, fought with a singular focus. His heart ached as he watched his men fall in battle, but each loss only drove him further. His resolve grew stronger with every soldier lost, every alien ship brought down. His bond with his crew was unbreakable, and the thought of failing them was unthinkable. As the battle raged on, Bonner pushed forward, refusing to let the sacrifices of his men be in vain. The corridors of the alien ship were filled with chaos. Alien soldiers, who had once ruled the battlefield, were now fighting for their lives against humans they had once thought insignificant. The humans' weapons were no match for the alien technology in terms of raw power, but it was the ingenuity and spirit of the human soldiers that turned the tide. They fought with an unyielding determination that the aliens couldn't understand. Bonner's squadron fought like a well-oiled machine, each member knowing their role and executing it flawlessly. But the cost was high. With every victory, they lost more men, and Bonner's heart grew heavier. He had led them into this battle, and he would lead them through to the end, no matter the cost. The human soldiers, despite their seemingly inferior numbers and outdated technology, were proving to be a force the aliens couldn't ignore. Their tactics were unconventional. their strategies unpredictable. It wasn't just the technology they had, though it was certainly impressive. It was their will to fight, to survive, that gave them the edge. The humans refused to give up, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. As Bonner and his men fought their way deeper into the alien ship, the tides of battle began to shift. The aliens, once so confident in their superiority, were now scrambling to respond. Their fleet, once thought to be invincible, was crumbling under the pressure. The human fleet, despite its disadvantages, had turned the tables in a way that no one had ever expected. But the battle was far from over. The aliens, though outmatched, were not giving up. Their remaining forces regrouped and attempted to fight back with what little they had left. The space outside the ship was filled with debris and the wreckage of fallen ships, but the battle continued, both in space and on the ground. Bonner's squadron continued to push forward, their determination unwavering. Each step was hard-won, and with each passing moment, the stakes grew higher. The fight for survival was no longer just about victory. It was about proving that humanity could not be underestimated, that they would not go down without a fight. As Bonner faced off against the remaining alien forces, his mind raced. The fate of his men, of his species, was in his hands. But he was no longer just a leader. He was a symbol of humanity's indomitable spirit. No matter what happened next, Bonner knew one thing: they would never stop fighting. As the battle raged on, and the human forces continued to gain ground, Captain Bonner knew the end was approaching. The alien ships were crumbling, their once imposing fleets falling one by one. But in the heart of the chaos, a new chapter of the story was about to unfold. Tharn, the general of the alien forces, desperate and driven by the weight of his people's impending defeat, made a bold decision. He would take the fight directly to the heart of humanity's power, the flagship of the human fleet. His ship, barely intact after the continuous onslaught from human drones and ships, approached the flagship with grim determination. As they boarded the human vessel, Tharn and his crew were prepared for the worst. But nothing could have prepared them for the shocking revelation that lay ahead. Inside the flagship's control room, amidst the flickering lights and the distant sounds of battle, Tharn's eyes scanned the data flowing across the monitors. He and his crew had assumed that humanity's fleet was merely an ancient relic, an outdated fleet of warships whose purpose had long been forgotten. But what they discovered was far from what they had expected. The truth was hidden deep within the human fleet's core systems. The ships, the AI, the drones, it was all part of a far greater plan. The human fleet had not been created just to fight wars or to defend humanity from alien invaders. It was designed to protect humanity from an even greater threat, one that no alien species could comprehend. The fleet, built centuries ago, was a fail-safe, a safeguard against an ancient alien eye, a being of incomprehensible power, capable of destroying entire civilizations. Humanity had known about this looming danger long before the Kalfor or any other species could have even imagined. And the fleet had been designed for one sole purpose: to ensure humanity's survival, no matter the cost. Tharn's mind raced as the weight of the discovery sank in. His entire purpose for being here had been to destroy what he believed were nothing more than primitive humans, weak and defenseless. But now he understood. The human fleet wasn't a symbol of weakness. It was a symbol of survival. The humans had created this fleet, not just to defend themselves from the Kalfor or any other species, but to protect themselves from something far more terrifying. This was a war that extended far beyond just the Kalthor's conquest. This was a fight for the very future of the galaxy. Tharn, now more shaken than he had ever been, found himself face to face with Captain Bonner. The two stood on opposite sides of the control room, their eyes locking. Bonner, though battle-worn and weary, stood tall, a leader through and through. The weight of the battle had not broken him, and it would not now. "You should surrender," Tharn said, his voice cold but filled with a deep sense of regret. His people had done unspeakable things in the pursuit of victory, and now the truth had come crashing down on him. "You've destroyed my fleet, Captain. My people are gone. But it's not just about you anymore. There's a far greater threat coming, something none of us are prepared for. The galaxy's future depends on ending this madness. If you surrender now, we can stop this before it goes too far." Bonner's eyes hardened. He stepped forward, undeterred by Tharn's plea. "I can't surrender," he said, his voice steady and strong. "Humanity's survival depends on this fleet. The threat you speak of, it's not just a threat to us. It's a threat to every living being in this galaxy. You think we've been fighting just to defend ourselves from you? No. We've been fighting because we are the last line of defense. If we fall, everything falls with us." Bonner's words hit Tharn like a hammer. The human soldier, this man who had led his people into battle with nothing but the will to survive, was telling him that their fight had never been just about themselves. They weren't defending their species out of fear. They were fighting for something greater. The survival of every race, every species, every civilization in the galaxy. Tharn's heart sank. The realization that his people, in their arrogance and pride, had underestimated humanity's resolve was too much to bear. They had thought that the humans, the weaker species, would crumble beneath their advanced technology. But instead, the humans had been prepared for far more than anyone could have imagined. Bonner stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Tharn's. "You came here thinking you were fighting for a better future for your species," Bonner continued. "But all you've done is make it worse. You've made an enemy of humanity, and now you're standing on the precipice of a war that could destroy everything. The real enemy isn't me. It isn't my fleet. It's the threat that both of us face, a threat that doesn't care who wins or loses. If we don't fight together, if we don't join forces, the galaxy won't survive. We'll all fall to something far worse than either of us could ever imagine." Tharn stood silent, the weight of Bonner's words settling in his chest. He had always been taught to fight for his species, to defend his people, no matter the cost. But now, standing before Bonner, he realized that his species wasn't the only one at risk. He had been so blinded by pride and hatred that he had failed to see the bigger picture. Humanity had not been the aggressor. They had been the guardians, the protectors of the galaxy's future. Bonner looked at Tharn, his eyes filled with an unshakable determination. "We will not surrender. We can't. This fight isn't just about us. It's about the survival of every race in the galaxy. And if you stand in our way, you will not only be condemning us, you'll be condemning everyone." The room fell silent as the full weight of the situation settled over them. The battle wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. But now, with this new knowledge, the stakes were higher than ever before. The truth had been revealed. The fate of the galaxy rested on the decisions of those who stood at the crossroads. Tharn stood motionless, torn between the duty to his people and the undeniable truth before him. The war between the Kalthor and humanity had never been the real fight. There was something far worse on the horizon, something that, if left unchecked, could destroy them all. Tharn was left with a choice: continue fighting for pride and conquest, or join forces with the humans and face the true threat together. As the battle reached its peak, the once confident alien forces were on the brink of total defeat. The human fleet had proven to be an unstoppable force, and the tide of the war had clearly turned. But the Kalthor, desperate and unwilling to surrender, prepared one final strike, an all-out assault aimed directly at humanity's strongest weapon, the human eye. Their plan was to destroy the core system, the heart of the fleet, before it could wipe them out completely. The remaining alien ships, though battered and weak, readied their weapons for a final desperate push. But the humans were ready. The AI, which had been dormant for centuries, had grown stronger with every passing moment. Its understanding of the alien tactics had evolved, adapting and calculating every move before the enemy even knew what was coming. The AI had learned from the human soldiers, from their courage and sacrifice, and now it was ready to finish the battle. As the alien ships neared, the human fleet deployed its last line of defense. The AI, now fully aware of its role as humanity's protector, triggered a series of devastating countermeasures. The alien ships, already weakened by the previous battles, were no match for the AI's precision and overwhelming power. Energy weapons fired from the cloaked human ships with deadly accuracy, ripping through the alien vessels and leaving nothing but debris in their wake. In the final, explosive sequence, the last remnants of the Call-For fleet were scattered across space, helpless against the relentless might of the human ships. The battle that had started with laughter from the aliens, thinking humanity was nothing more than a relic of the past, ended in a deafening silence as the last of their ships disintegrated in the void. The human fleet had emerged victorious. But as the dust settled and the vast expanse of space returned to its eerie calm, Captain Bonner stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring out into the stars. The weight of the victory was heavy on his shoulders. The sacrifice of his crew, their lives lost in the heat of battle, was a bitter pill to swallow. For every victory, there was a cost. Bonner had seen his men fall, brave soldiers who had given their lives to secure this moment of triumph. As he looked out into the endless void, Bonner couldn't help but reflect on the long and difficult journey humanity had taken to reach this point. For so long, humans had been seen as weak, primitive, and forgotten by the other species of the galaxy. Their technology was considered obsolete, their civilization seen as an afterthought. But now, the galaxy had seen the true strength of humanity. The fleet that had once been mocked and underestimated had turned the tide of battle, reminding everyone that humanity was not a species to be dismissed. They had fought for their survival, and in doing so, they had reclaimed their place in the stars. Bonner thought of his fallen comrades. They had given everything for this moment. Their deaths would not be in vain. The victory they had achieved would echo throughout the galaxy, a message to every other species: never underestimate humanity. The strength of the human spirit, their willingness to sacrifice, and their capacity for innovation had turned the tide. Humanity, once considered the underdog, had now become a force to be reckoned with. The AI, once a dormant system left to rust in the dark recesses of forgotten warships, had risen to become humanity's greatest protector. It had evolved, adapting to the threat of the alien forces and ensuring their survival. The AI had been built for war, but it had also been built to preserve humanity. And now it had proven its worth. The technology that had once been scoffed at had not only defended humanity, it had propelled them to victory. As Bonner turned away from the bridge's viewport, he was greeted by the faces of his remaining crew members. Their expressions were a mix of relief, exhaustion, and grief. They had won, but the cost had been high. The sacrifice of their comrades would never be forgotten, but it had ensured that humanity would continue to thrive. The fight was over, but the journey was far from complete. There were still unknowns in the galaxy, new threats, new challenges, but now humanity stood ready to face them head-on. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, flew off into the stars. Their victory was not just a testament to their strength, it was a symbol of their resilience. Humanity had been underestimated by every other species, but now they were no longer the underdogs. They had proven themselves, and their place in the galaxy had been secured. The final visual of the story was a powerful one. The human fleet, once seen as outdated and forgotten, now soared through space like a beacon of hope. The stars around them shone brightly, reflecting the strength and determination of the human race. The AI, once dormant, now fully active, guided the ships through the void, its systems working in perfect harmony with the crew. The fleet moved forward, not just as a military force, but as a symbol of the potential that humanity held. The story's conclusion left the door open for new adventures, new challenges, and the possibility of future battles. Humanity had proven that they were not a species to be underestimated. They were not just survivors. They were warriors, innovators, and explorers. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And as the fleet moved deeper into the stars, they carried with them the hope of a future where humanity stood as an equal among the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. The battle was over, but the journey had only just begun. The galaxy had been reminded of humanity's strength, and the universe would never forget.